How to get rich without anyone noticing. Living below your means, the ultimate hack. Why do your neighbors who drive 10-year-old cars and live in modest homes often have more wealth than those flashing luxury purchases on social media? While most people spend money to appear successful, quietly wealthy individuals understand that real wealth remains invisible, built through intentional choices rather than impressive displays. Here's what conventional financial advice misses. Living below your means isn't about extreme deprivation or becoming antisocial with money. It's about aligning your spending with your actual values rather than social expectations while maintaining healthy relationships and reasonable life enjoyment. Over the next few minutes, I'll reveal 7 principles for intentional spending that build wealth without sacrificing your mental health or important relationships. The 5th principle shows the psychology behind why modest spenders often accumulate more wealth than high earners who focus on appearances. Critical balance. Financial discipline should enhance rather than restrict your overall well-being and social connections. If you want sustainable wealth strategies without harmful extremes, subscribe and comment intentional wealth below. But that's just the beginning. What I'm about to reveal shows why the iceberg's hidden depth explains the difference between looking wealthy and building actual financial security. Principle 1. Wealth remains invisible while consumption is visible. Here's something that drives me crazy about our culture. We've been trained to judge people's financial success by what we can see, but real wealth is almost always invisible. You know this feeling, right? You're scrolling through social media, seeing friends post vacation photos from expensive resorts, showing off new cars, or flaunting designer purchases. Meanwhile, you're trying to be responsible with your money, and you start wondering if you're doing something wrong. Why does everyone else seem to be living this amazing lifestyle while you're sitting here trying to save a few $100 each month? Let me tell you about something fascinating that happens in nature. When you see an iceberg floating in the ocean, what you're looking at is maybe 10% of its actual size. The massive, powerful part, the part that can sink ships, is completely hidden underwater. The visible tip gives you almost no information about the iceberg's true strength and size. This is exactly how wealth works in real life. That friend posting from Bali probably maxed out 3 credit cards to get there. The guy with the brand new BMW is making payments for the next 7 years and has 0 emergency savings. They're showing you the tiny visible tip while the huge foundation, their actual financial position, is underwater in debt. Meanwhile, the people quietly building real wealth look pretty ordinary. They drive reliable older cars, live in modest homes, and post pictures of their home-cooked meals instead of 5-star restaurants. Their wealth sits invisibly in investment accounts, real estate equity, and business assets that don't make for impressive Instagram stories. Here's what you can do starting today. Stop making financial decisions based on how they'll look to other people. The next time you're tempted to buy something to impress others, ask yourself this simple question. Will this purchase help me build wealth, or am I just paying to look successful? Track your spending for 1 week and circle every purchase you made primarily for appearances rather than actual utility or enjoyment. You'll probably be shocked at how much money goes toward maintaining an image instead of building a foundation. The shift you need to make is this. Real wealth is like an iceberg. The most powerful part remains hidden. Stop trying to build the visible tip and start focusing on the massive foundation underneath that nobody else needs to see. Principle 2. Delayed gratification for compound growth. The hardest part about building wealth isn't figuring out what to do. It's having the patience to delay gratification when everything around you screams, "Buy it now." We live in a world of instant everything, and waiting for compound growth to work feels painfully slow compared to the immediate satisfaction of spending money. You feel this tension every time you walk past something you want but don't really need. That voice in your head says, "Life's short, just get it. You work hard, you deserve this. And honestly, sometimes that voice has a point. But here's what happens when you always listen to it. You end up trading your future wealth for temporary pleasures that you'll barely remember a year from now. Let me tell you about two gardeners who approached their harvest completely differently. The seed saver looked at his beautiful crop and made a tough choice. Instead of eating all the best fruit, he carefully selected the finest specimens and saved their seeds for next season. It meant less immediate enjoyment, but he understood something important about how abundance actually works. The immediate consumer couldn't resist. Every delicious piece of fruit got eaten right away because, hey, why wait? The harvest was there, he was hungry, and it tasted amazing. This approach felt more satisfying in the moment and seemed like the natural thing to do. But here's what happened over time. The seed saver's subsequent harvests kept getting bigger and better because he was always planting the seeds from his best fruit. The immediate consumer had great meals during harvest season, but his garden never grew beyond that original size. Your money works exactly the same way. Every dollar you don't spend today is like a seed that can grow into multiple dollars later. The challenge is choosing which seeds to plant instead of consuming everything immediately. Start with this simple approach. Before any non-essential purchase over $100, wait 48 hours and ask yourself, what could this money become if I invested it instead? Then, actually run the math. $200 invested at 8% annual returns becomes about $400 in 9 years without you doing anything. The mental shift you need to make is this. You're not depriving yourself when you skip unnecessary purchases. You're paying your future self first. Every dollar you redirect from consumption to investment is choosing between enjoying something small today and enjoying something much bigger later. Both are valid choices, but wealthy people consistently choose the bigger, later reward. Principle 3. Value over status in purchasing decisions. We're constantly bombarded with marketing messages telling us that expensive equals better, and it creates this psychological trap where we start believing that spending more money automatically gets us higher quality or better results. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of the time, you're paying extra for the brand name or status symbol, not actual performance. You've felt this pressure, right? Walking into a store and seeing two similar products. One costs $50, the other costs $200. Your brain immediately assumes the expensive one must be superior, even when the actual functional difference might be minimal. We've been conditioned to associate price with quality, but that connection isn't as reliable as we think. Let me tell you about two craftsmen who approached their tool buying completely differently. The status buyer always went for the most expensive, impressive-looking tools because he believed they would make him appear more professional and successful. His workshop looked amazing, and other craftsmen were definitely impressed when they visited. The function optimizer had a different approach. He researched what he actually needed to accomplish his work effectively, then found the most reliable option that met those requirements at a reasonable price. His tools looked ordinary, maybe even cheap, compared to his colleague's setup, but they got the job done just as well. Here's what happened over time. Both craftsmen produced similar quality work, but the function optimizer had way more money left over to invest in his business, his skills, and his future. The status buyer looked more successful, but was actually falling behind financially because so much of his money went to appearances instead of substance. This principle applies to almost everything you buy. That $60,000 luxury car gets you to work the same as a reliable $25,000 vehicle. The $300 designer jeans don't make you look significantly better than well-fitting $50 jeans. The expensive restaurant doesn't necessarily provide a better dining experience than a great local spot. Here's your action step. Before your next major purchase, write down exactly what you need this item to accomplish. Then, find 3 options that meet those requirements and compare their actual performance, not their price tags or brand prestige. The mindset shift you need is this: expensive doesn't automatically mean better, and other people care way less about your stuff than you think they do. Focus on buying things that genuinely improve your life or help you achieve your goals, not things that make you look impressive to strangers who don't really matter anyway. Principle 4. Small, consistent improvements create dramatic long-term results. Here's the brutal truth about building wealth that nobody wants to hear. It's incredibly boring and takes way longer than you think. We live in a culture that promises instant results. So when wealth building requires decades of small, consistent actions, most people give up before the magic really starts happening. You've probably felt this frustration yourself. You start saving money, maybe investing a few $100s a month, and after 6 months, you look at your account and think, this is it? This is all I have to show for all this discipline and sacrifice? The progress feels so slow that it seems pointless, especially when you see other people apparently getting rich quickly through crypto, day trading, or some business opportunity. Let me tell you about 2 scholars pursuing knowledge in completely different ways. The cramming student believed in dramatic, intensive efforts. When he had an important exam, he'd pull all-nighters, drink endless coffee, and try to absorb months of information in a few days. It felt productive and impressive. He was clearly working harder than everyone else. The daily reader took a different approach. He spent just 30 minutes each day reading and studying, even when there was no immediate deadline or test coming up. His progress seemed insignificant compared to the cramming student's dramatic efforts, and people often didn't even notice he was studying at all. But here's what happened over time. The cramming student retained very little information long-term and had to relearn the same material repeatedly. The daily reader developed deep, lasting knowledge that compounded on itself. Each day's reading built on previous days, creating connections and insights that wouldn't have been possible through cramming. Your wealth works exactly the same way. Saving $300 a month doesn't feel impressive, but after 20 years at 7% returns, you'd have about $147,000. That's the power of compound growth that most people never experience because they quit during the boring early years. Here's what you can do today. Pick one small financial habit and commit to it for 30 days. Maybe it's saving $5 every day, or maybe it's making coffee at home instead of buying it. The amount doesn't matter as much as proving to yourself that you can be consistent. The mindset shift you need is this: wealth building isn't about dramatic gestures or perfect months. It's about boring consistency over decades. The people who get rich slowly are the ones who actually stay rich, while the get-rich-quick crowd usually ends up broke again. Principle 5. Wealthy behavior often appears unremarkable. Here's something that messes with people's heads about wealth. The richest people in your neighborhood probably look completely ordinary, while the people flashing expensive stuff are often drowning in debt. We've been programmed to think wealth looks flashy, but real wealth is usually invisible. You've probably experienced this confusion yourself. You see someone driving a luxury car or wearing designer clothes and automatically assume they're doing better financially than you are. Meanwhile, you're being responsible with your money, and it feels like you're falling behind because you don't have anything impressive to show for it. It creates this nagging doubt. Am I missing something? Should I be spending more to look successful? Let me tell you about 2 hunters with completely different approaches. The flashy hunter showed up with the most expensive gear money could buy. Premium camouflage, top-of-the-line rifle, fancy GPS equipment, the works. He looked like a serious professional and impressed everyone at the hunting lodge. His setup screamed success and expertise. The effective tracker wore basic functional gear that he'd owned for years. His equipment looked unremarkable, maybe even cheap compared to the flashy hunter's setup. People probably assumed he was just a casual weekend hunter who didn't take it seriously. But here's what happened in the field. The effective tracker consistently brought home game, while the flashy hunter often returned empty-handed. The tracker understood animal behavior, knew the terrain, and had developed real skills over decades. His success came from knowledge and patience, not expensive equipment. The flashy hunter had spent so much money on gear that he couldn't afford as many hunting trips. Plus, he was more focused on looking the part than actually developing the skills that lead to success. This is exactly how wealth works in real life. Studies show that most millionaires drive used cars, live in modest homes, and shop at regular stores. They look ordinary because they're putting their money toward building assets instead of maintaining an image. Here's what you can do right now. Look around your life and identify one area where you're spending money primarily to impress others rather than for actual utility or enjoyment. Maybe it's your car payment, clothing budget, or dining habits. The mindset shift you need is this. If you want to be wealthy, stop trying to look wealthy. Real wealth is built by people who are comfortable appearing ordinary while they quietly accumulate assets. Let other people spend their money on the show while you build the substance. Principle 6. Control expenses to maximize wealth accumulation. One of the biggest wealth killers isn't what most people think. It's not making too little money. It's the slow creep of expenses that happens so gradually you don't even notice until your entire paycheck is spoken for. Every time your income goes up, your spending mysteriously rises to match it, leaving you feeling broke despite earning more than ever. You've probably lived this yourself. You get a raise or a bonus, and instead of banking that extra money, it somehow disappears into slightly nicer restaurants, a better apartment, upgraded subscriptions, or just general lifestyle improvements that feel reasonable in the moment. Before you know it, you're living paycheck to paycheck on an income that should have made you feel wealthy. Let me tell you about two merchants who handled their business expenses completely differently. The high overhead trader believed that looking successful was essential for attracting customers, so he spent heavily on the fanciest storefront, expensive displays, a premium location, and luxury accommodations when traveling. His thinking was that customers would trust him more if he appeared prosperous. The efficient operator took a different approach. He controlled costs carefully while still maintaining quality and professional relationships. He found a good location that didn't cost a fortune, invested in functional rather than flashy displays, and focused his spending on things that actually improved his business rather than just his image. Here's what happened. Both merchants served similar customers and provided comparable products, but the efficient operator had way more money left over to reinvest in inventory, expand his business, and build wealth. The high overhead trader looked more successful but was actually struggling financially because his expenses consumed most of his profits. The key insight here isn't to become a penny-pinching miser who never enjoys anything. It's about being intentional with your expenses and distinguishing between spending that genuinely improves your life versus spending that just makes you look more successful. Here's something you can do this week. Track every expense for 7 days, then categorize each purchase as either necessary, genuinely enjoyable, or for appearances. You'll probably be surprised how much money goes toward the third category. The mindset shift you need is this. Controlling expenses isn't about deprivation. It's about making conscious choices so your money goes toward things that actually matter to you. The goal is to create a margin between your income and expenses so you can build wealth while still enjoying life reasonably. Extreme frugality can be just as harmful as mindless spending. Principle 7. Align spending with personal values rather than social expectations. The most expensive trap in personal finance isn't credit card debt or bad investments. It's spending your life trying to meet other people's expectations instead of living according to your own values. When you make financial decisions based on what others might think, you end up pouring money into things that don't actually matter to you. You know this struggle intimately. Maybe it's feeling pressure to pick up expensive dinner tabs to appear generous, or buying clothes you don't really love because they're appropriate for your social circle, or living in a pricier neighborhood because it has the right address. These decisions feel necessary in the moment, but they slowly drain your resources while pulling you away from what you actually care about. Let me tell you about two philosophers who approach life completely differently. The external validator constantly spent money to gain approval and meet social expectations. He bought expensive books to impress colleagues, hosted lavish dinner parties to maintain his reputation, and lived in accommodations that projected success rather than provided genuine comfort. The internal compass made financial decisions based on his personal values and long-term goals. He spent generously on things that genuinely mattered to him. Maybe travel for learning, quality time with family, or supporting causes he believed in, while staying modest in areas that didn't align with his priorities. Here's what happened. The external validator was constantly stressed about money because he could never satisfy everyone's expectations. The internal compass lived with less financial anxiety because his spending reflected his authentic choices rather than external pressure. The key isn't to become antisocial or stop caring about relationships. It's about distinguishing between spending that genuinely strengthens important relationships versus spending that's driven by anxiety about what others might think. Here's something you can try. For the next month, before any non-essential purchase, ask yourself, am I buying this because I want it or because I think I should want it? You'll be surprised how often the honest answer reveals spending driven by external expectations rather than personal values. The mindset shift you need is this. Authentic financial decisions feel lighter, even when they involve saying no to things others expect from you. When your spending aligns with your actual values rather than imagined social obligations, you'll find that you need less money to feel satisfied, and that building wealth becomes easier because you're not constantly fighting against your own priorities. Living below your means works best when it means living according to your means. These 7 principles reveal that building wealth through intentional spending isn't about extreme deprivation or becoming antisocial with money. It's about aligning your financial choices with your actual values rather than social expectations, while maintaining healthy relationships and reasonable life enjoyment. The key insight here is balance. Living below your means should feel sustainable and enhance your overall well-being, not create anxiety or damage important relationships. If your financial discipline starts making you miserable or socially isolated, you've probably taken it too far. Building substantial wealth requires decades of consistent habits, not perfect months or extreme sacrifices. The goal is to create sustainable practices that support both your financial future and your present-day happiness. Remember that your worth extends far beyond your bank account. Strong relationships, good health, and life satisfaction matter more than any financial metric. How do you balance financial discipline with maintaining relationships and mental health? What's worked best for you in living intentionally without going to unhealthy extremes? Share your thoughtful approach below and subscribe for more content that prioritizes both financial wisdom and overall well-being.